Good evening, and welcome to In My Humble Opinion. I'm your host, Niceguy. Last week, we were speaking with Danah Gaz, and we had covered transgender rights. We had covered the police situation in Baltimore, and we were just getting into politics when, unfortunately, we had to cut the conversation short. There was a bit more, and I want to play it for you now. Unfortunately, we did lose some of it towards the end, but due to technical difficulties. But it was an interesting discussion, and I'd like to pick it up now where we left off last week. Okay, so we're picking up this conversation with my guest from last week, Danah Gaz. There was a little bit left to discuss, and we unfortunately ran out of time. So we left off talking about the situation in Baltimore and the police and police brutality, and I think we just about covered that. But as we're getting into politics and we're getting into to this now, you've just self-described as an anarchist, hate Republicans, hate liberals more, which is an interesting position to have, but.
Mostly right, because liberals think they're a whole lot better than Republicans.
See, you know what? That's what Republicans say. Well, no, but okay, but wait a second. I don't know. I think when I think of Republicans, I tend to think of the Christians that are telling us everything we're doing wrong in terms of I don't know, everything we believe or whatever. Let's make Christianity the official state religion. I mean, separation of church and state is a big deal for me. So it's like that's one that's going to I'm going to trip over that one every time. So who are you voting for? Assuming "fuck you" isn't on the ballot.
You want to know how I see it?
Clinton booster? You Clinton booster?
Both of you?
I'm sorry, what?
Well, I won't vote.
No, I know. I'm not surprised.
You should be out in the streets. I won't vote. You should be out in the streets with me.
And to anyone who's saying don't vote, I mean, let's be clear. Your choice not to vote is an absolute deliberate choice.
About Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah.
Republicans are your foil.
Okay. Well, okay, yeah. But wait. So are you of the position then that it doesn't matter? That there's no difference between? Would you go so far as to say there's really no substantive difference between Republicans and Democrats?
I think they're playing a game of chicken with you. The Republicans are a foil and a threat.
Okay.
To hold over your head so that you'll keep voting for this other party as they move more and more to the right and they answer to the ruling class. Basically, they've got you by the short hair.
Okay.
You obviously can't vote because it means the Republicans go in. I honestly think this is orchestrated. I wouldn't be surprised if it was orchestrated.
Well, I guess the only thing in terms of the foil,
they've got you by the short hairs, and they have for the past 30 years. You guys are voting from a position of being on the defensive, and basically, I think what happened started as a shift in the Overton window. Basically, the Republicans realized if they moved to the right, that you'd have to follow.
Right. So, in other words, though, and this is something I agree entirely. When this is what pisses me off.
I don't think it's that way anymore, though.
Well, but I don't think there's, in other words, it clearly is not that as the Republicans move to the right, the Democrats move to the left. I mean, I keep hearing that, and that's bullshit.
No.
Right.
Yeah, they've both moved to the right.
Well, now, okay, so now the criticism of Hillary Clinton, I think, most commonly that I'm hearing, well, from liberals, and I'm talking about liberals, not neoliberals now, and there is a difference, is her closeness to Wall Street. And her hawkishness on foreign policy. And foreign policy, unfortunately, these days is tied too much to economics anyway. That foreign policy ends up becoming an economic policy, which is kind of disturbing. But that's kind of how I see it.
I agree with all of that.
Yeah. So, but I guess if let's say you had, is there a candidate that you could see yourself voting for, say Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders? Like, how would you view one of them? No,
definitely not Warren.
Really? Why is that?
For starters, she's defended shelling hospitals and schools in Gaza. Furthermore, her vote for Monsanto was kind of questionable. Okay. And I really don't think that anyone that lives in a $5 million home can honestly advocate for the proletariat.
Okay, there's a good point there. So what about Sanders?
They're out of touch.
Okay. Despite the rhetoric, despite what she has said on economics.
Okay, Sanders, I feel like Sanders might be the most honest man in Congress.
Okay. So therefore he'd make a terrible president.
Sanders might be the most honest man in Congress, or probably make a Carter. But saying the most honest man in Congress is a little bit like saying, well, I'm not going to repeat it. You know the expression.
Right, exactly.
Anyway, I actively endorse any of them. What I think needs to happen, honestly, is you guys need to stop voting for the lesser evil, and you guys need to suck it up and take your lumps.
Okay.
Because, I mean, okay, I'm gonna pretend that I'm not outright going to advocate for the abolition of the government. Okay,
All right.
I'm gonna go ahead and play devil's advocate with myself again.
Okay,
and say,
sure.
let's say you want them to represent you again, because right now they have no incentive to.
They take you for granted.
They will if you stop voting for them.
Right.
And it's going to hurt, and it's going to suck.
Well, I think it's going to do more than hurt. I think it's going to do actual harm. I mean,
get into the streets and stop voting for them for a few cycles, and then see what happens.
Well, okay, but first of all,
but it's already been doing harm.
The right wing would love that. First of all, second of all, I think about, but you talk about doing harm, and don't get me wrong, I'm not hero worshiping any of the people I'm about to mention. But when I think of the Supreme Court, and I think of where we are right now, again, think of gay marriage, and don't get me wrong, the Supreme Court has made a lot of bad decisions lately, no question about it. But how much different is it if instead of Kagan and Sotomayor, neither of whom I'm a huge fan of, but if instead of them you had John McCain and Sarah Palin deciding who was going to be those replacements, and you would have replaced Stevens and Souter with, who basically have been, despite being Republican appointees, have been very reliable liberal votes, and they were replaced with two liberal. Actually, they were replaced with two moderates. So if anything, Obama's moved the court a little bit to the right, but they're still. I can't say I disagree with any of those two votes of those two so far. But my God, if you put two conservatives there instead, or if Ruth Bader Ginsburg, for example, in the next presidential cycle is replaced by a conservative, my God, you'll never win another case. You think corporate power is bad now? I mean, I'm looking at this saying if Scalia or Thomas retires and their replacement is named by a Democrat, and Ginsburg's replacement essentially keeps the status quo there, and you now have 5-4 in your favor, okay, and one of those four is Kennedy, who is kind of a wild. He's usually conservative, but every now and then especially like on matters of gay rights, he switches the opposition. I wouldn't call him a straight swing vote. He's definitely a conservative, but if he's now one of four, then I think something can be done about corporate power. I think now you have a court that's not so eager to recognize corporations as people. I don't know. Is there not something to that? And is there not? Are we not as
judges, right?
I'm sorry?
You realize you can impeach. That used to be an argument. Before Citizens United.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
This court is already over the high wall.
Well, this court, yeah.
It's Citizens United turned this, any vestige of a democracy that you thought you had before, it's gone.
Agreed.
It's gone.
But again,
it's over.
Decisions can be overturned. Precedents can be reinterpreted. I mean, and again, who do you want reinterpreting that? And by the way, when they pass a law in Congress, whether it's
not going to happen with Hillary, it's not.
I just think of, if I could imagine the worst justice that Hillary Clinton would likely.
It's not going to happen with Hillary in office.
Right. Well, I again though, when I think of Supreme Court justices, I think of this as the one thing that a president can do that is guaranteed to go beyond that. I think the worst justice she'll appoint is better than the best justice Ted Cruz would appoint by a huge margin.
I wouldn't necessarily even say that, but maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. They still have to get their Senate approval. And you can still put hold vote judges, so I don't know if it would be that extreme, but maybe it would.
Yeah, I mean,
So what I'm saying right now is your democracy is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you're not even. This isn't. You have a lot left to lose, but you're already losing it. Now, at some point, you have to start getting it back. And right now, voting for Hillary and praying that her court appointments aren't going to be more corporate oligarchs and just more like basically turning this place into a police state. I mean, look what happened under Obama. Look what happened under the Roberts Court. You can impeach judges.
Mm-hmm. You can impeach presidents too, in theory, but
if Anthony Weiner hadn't been showing his wiener to people, you know what happened there, right?
Yeah.
He had just started that investigation, and then all of a sudden, boom.
Yeah.
But it can happen.
I don't know.
You're gonna have to, you guys are. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt. You have to call their bluff. It's not gonna change. It's been getting steadily worse over the past 30 years.
There's no question about that.
How are you going to... You need accountability. You don't have it. You guys gave it away and gave it away and gave it away and gave it away and gave it away. And here we are.
Right.
Now, if you would have taken it back at the beginning, you wouldn't be here. But here we are.
Right.
The longer it goes on, the more it's going to hurt. I mean, this is the depressing part. But yeah, the longer it goes on, it's going to hurt. It's just going to be a slower boil.
Hmm.
So what do you do? I mean, yeah, it's scary. The idea is scary, but what else are you going to do?
Well, and it's particularly scary. You mentioned the Republicans as a foil, and I think that's a perfect example because right now, I mean, it's although I disagreed with I disagreed with pretty much all of Romney's policies. I didn't think the guy was completely insane. When I look at Ted Cruz, when I look at Rand Paul, when I look at Walker, hell, just the fact Ben Carson, just the fact that Donald Trump is being actually treated like a candidate. This isn't just somebody. These are not a bunch of people that I disagree with their policies. I have serious judgment. They just seem insane. I mean, it's not even a question.
But still, you'll vote for Mitt Romney in 2020. But they'll have a D after their name.
Well, okay, and that's the other thing too is I guess it's still. I mean, there's an awful lot. You mentioned Citizens United, and there's a lot of money being put by these corporate interests to back Republicans. They're spending billions of dollars to see Republicans elected, and
they're spending billions of dollars to see anyone elected that's going to answer to them.
True, yeah.
It's a game,
right?
And Hillary Clinton is everything these corporations could ever want. I mean, Obama was pretty good to him too.
Yeah. Obamacare.
Him in jail,
right?
He gave him a mandate.
Yeah.
I mean, he should have thrown the health companies don't deserve a mandate. They deserve to be investigated. They deserve to have their boards thrown in jail.
Right.
And what do they have now? They have basically a license to pick your pocket.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because whether it's your pocket or whether it's our tax money, and again, I don't necessarily oppose the idea of universal healthcare. I don't. I mean, I think that you could argue from a health.
I'm totally for single payer.
Oh yeah. But this is and single payer was never even on the table. That was conceded just to get the Republicans to talk to them back in the beginning, and they still never did. And so what we have essentially Bob Dole's healthcare plan from 1996 mixed with the tax credit idea that John McCain ran on in 2008, mixed with, an expansion of Medicaid, which half the Republican governors have now essentially refused, went to court for the right to refuse to do that. Yep. And this is why when I do hear though, and again, I'm not cheerleading for Obamacare because I'm with you with the idea that single payer and publicly financed and all that is a better system and can be a better system. And I've described kind of my design for it on my blog in the past. But when someone says, "Oh well, I lost my insurance or I lost my coverage because of Obamacare," I am inclined to say, no, bullshit. You lost it because your Republican governor is not expanding Medicaid, which is what should be covering you. Or they're not, or they didn't want to set up the exchange or whatever, and they've done everything they can to prevent it and make it not work.
Well, they were doing that since before the bill ever even got passed. They were making sure it would be just a disaster, Absolutely. And they already have. The employers don't have standards really as far as the healthcare goes. They can offer crap plans.
Right.
And what is that? The only plans that are even really regulated are on the exchange, and you can't get them because of the way the thing works. Because
fully funded versus self-funded. Is that what you were getting at?
I'm getting at, employer plan.
Yeah.
Don't have the same standards as they do on the exchange.
Correct.
If I can go to the exchange and get a subsidized plan, there's going to be a number of standards that those plans have to adhere to. Yes. If I go to an employer can offer me basically the same thing they always have.
Right.
They don't have to. It doesn't. So then you're screwed because you can't work full time because you don't want these plans.
Right.
Any more than they want to give them to you.
Well, I mean, Noel, I don't know if I'd go that far. I work with a lot of people, and every single one of us is on the company plan.
Well, I work with a lot of people, and almost nobody is.
Okay, all right, different experience.
If you're a working poor, or if you're blue collar these days, which means no union,
right?
You're not geting those kinds of plans.
Well, this is a slightly different take because I'm in the Detroit area, so it's one of the last sort of holdouts where there is still strong union representation with the UAW, and there's a lot of people have moved their plants, but there are still plants in the area, and there are plants in I've been to plants in Minnesota, Kansas City, all around, and several in Michigan. You know, so there is still some union representation here, and but even so,
yes, your plans are going to be better.
Yeah, yeah, and well, I remember when they came up with that trope that said that the GM workers are making $70 an hour, or the UAW workers are making $70 an hour. I can tell you that came as quite a shock to most of the UAW people I spoke to.
Yeah.
Hey, did you guys know you're making $70 an hour? They're like, yeah, yeah, right. I heard that. I laughed my ass off. I mean, and it's not even benefits. They came up with that number by taking all of the legacy costs, so all of the costs of retirees, and just dividing it by the number of hours. So they weren't getting that. That was such a lie.
Yeah.
But so well, I guess that getting back to so and just to wrap it up, because we are coming up on like a 20-minute mark, and I need to leave some space in the rest of the program here. So we've talked before about you definitely said you're an anti-capitalist, de facto communist. But and I'm not going to defend the system of capitalism we have now. This idea of a laissez-faire capitalist system, the idea that a free market means an unregulated market, because I think a free market means if you're going to get any benefit from that, you need competition. And we've basically eliminated our antitrust laws. We've eliminated all the regulations that really would have given anything resembling a free market. So it definitely is all rigged to the big guys. There's no question about that. But when I think of, say, a post-World War II, New Deal, strong unions, that type of capitalism, and I guess bridge the gap between what you would see as an economic system, because when you say communism, of course, most people are thinking of historical examples, pretty much none of which, it does not have a great track record in most countries. I mean, look, China, Soviet Union, and I think you've acknowledged that, in our past conversations, that these are kind of worst case scenarios.
Okay, the Soviet Union was state capitalist.
Well, yeah, right, and so is China. Really, when you come right down to it, so is China.
It wasn't communist.
Yeah, and so is China.
Well, Soviet Union was basically a giant corporation.
Yeah,
that's what's capitalist. Basically, a nation operating as one big corp.
So
that was Stalinist Russia. That was Soviet Union.
So I mean, I guess in that
closest
instance,
thing.
Yeah, what is your ideal right now, or closest thing to it?
Well, okay. The closest thing that's ever been done,
and
this isn't even communism, but it's a lot closer than anything else that's ever been done, was Catalonia, 1933 to 36. And it was a short time, but it was the closest thing. It was a bunch of anarcho-collectivists, not even strictly communist, but it was the closest thing to communism on any significant scale that I've ever seen.
Now, I'm not familiar, I'm actually not familiar with the history of that. How did that end?
Badly, because of Westendust and Hitler, Nazi Germany. It ended badly because of Francisco Franco.
Okay, so they were
36 was when Francisco Franco won the war against the Spanish Republicans.
Gotcha.
They were wiped out and rounded up and executed.
So they were taken over by fascists.
Well,
and that's kind of where I want to leave, because is anarchy. I mean, I would submit that laissez-faire capitalism essentially fails for the same reason that communism does, and that's human nature. That's no matter what system you have, there's greed, there's avarice, there's a desire for power. And is anarchy even possible if we I mean, I don't know. You're not. I don't think you're going to get rid of. You're going to get rid of that. So how do you?
People are naturally inclined to cooperate if you incentivize. If you incentivize cooperation.
No, I got incentivized cooperation, and I guess But again, how do you incentivize that? So you're back to a strong. You're back to a strong central state, though, to incentivize cooperation. Otherwise, how do you do it? No.
Basically, what you do is communism was designed to be classless and stateless.
Well, yeah.
So the way that works is goods are available. Goods are available, and private property does not exist in terms of land.
Right.
You have personal property and you have public property. Everybody has a stake in the means of production. Basically, you're in a community, and every single one of you is a stakeholder.
Except that's never really come to fruition.
As an example of it at least working on some level, and it's still in its infancy, Rahova in Serbia, in basically Kurdistan. Northern Syria right now, you've got the YPG and the white.
Unfortunately, that was about all we were able to get. We were starting to have some serious computer problems. I apologize and don't know what was going on, but anyway, that was Danah Gaz. Danah, I'd like to thank you for coming on the program. There is one thing though I want to revisit, and this is from our discussion last week. We had spent some time talking about the situation in Baltimore, and I do hope, it is my sincere hope that by the time this airs, that this is actually a bit of an obsolete topic. Obsolete as far as it relates to Baltimore. I certainly hope we're not still talking about it, and I certainly hope we haven't started talking about the next situation such as this. But and this is gonna rub some people the wrong way, but I think it has to be said. I'm a bit appalled at how the media covers not just situations like what happened in Baltimore, but really every time something like this happens, we're left with one image that sticks with us, and I don't believe it's us. I believe this is deliberate, and that is the idea that basically it's inevitable that we're going to end up with black people looting and burning the place down. And before I continue, let me say I am not trying to suggest that burning and looting is justified or defensible. I don't want to put up a defense for that, but I want to point out that the fact that was what we ended up talking about was deliberate. Okay, this was something that the media was doing because they want us focused on the looting. They don't want us focused on the problem. If we focus on the problem, if we sympathize with the victims, then we start asking difficult questions about the police, about poverty, about income inequality, about public services. And these are generally speaking not questions that they want us asking. Who are they? Well, the corporations that own the media, for a start. I mean, before anybody starts telling me about a liberal media, and let me tell you, every time I hear about liberal media, I feel like the Morpheus meme. What if I told you there was no liberal media? Here's the thing. I mean, 5% of the media is owned by 6 or 7 huge corporations, huge multinational for-profit corporations that derive their income from the sponsorship of other huge multinational for-profit corporations. Now, if you look at that system and you think that that is a recipe for liberalism, I'm afraid you don't know what words mean. Okay, that is not a recipe for liberalism, it's a recipe for corporatism. And really, that is where, sure, we're going to cover the story because we don't really want the police just shooting people willy-nilly. But basically, we're going to end with the idea that blacks are rioting. Now, we're left with that question, that famous question. Well, why is it whenever this kind of stuff happens, the blacks are the only people that ever riot? Really? I'm gonna read you a couple of cities and dates, and I want you to think about this as I read this. San Francisco, 2014. Vancouver, 2011. Ohio State University, 2015. Denver, 1999. Montreal, 1993. Penn State, 2011. Chicago, 1992. Boston, 2004. And Keene, 2014. I might mention Detroit, 1984 as well. All of those cities and dates have a couple things in common. First of all, they have huge riots happening with property damage and broken windows and cars being flipped over and set on fire, including police cars. They have injuries. They have hundreds of arrests. They even have many of them, not all of them, many of them have people getting killed. Okay? And they're predominantly white. That was the other part of it. Now, you know what those were? Were those protests at police brutality? Was that pushing back at a system of oppression? No, all of those things happened. All of those events, violence, vandalism, destruction of property, lawlessness, arrests, injuries, deaths, all of that occurred, with the exception of Keene. I'll get to Keene in a minute. All of that occurred because a sports team scored more points or failed to score more points than another sports team. And Penn State was when a football coach was fired. Fired for covering up child molestation, I might add. So, when we're going to talk about, why do the blacks always riot? First of all, not true. They're just the ones that have good reasons to riot. They're rioting over people getting killed. White people riot over idiotic stuff like sports teams. And the thing in Keene was about pumpkins. A pumpkin festival that unfortunately got out of hand. Hey, look at that. Because the police were a little too militant in it. It was the lone time any one of those involved white people, and the police were getting a little bit too militant with them. Now, the other thing, I bring all that up, not just to blow out of the water the idea that black people are somehow the only race that misbehave in large groups, okay? But also to point out that the media covers this in a very different manner because the people involved in those incidents were never referred to as rioters or looters or thugs. They were referred to as revelers, celebrators. People were celebrating. They weren't rioting. So wait a minute. So when you are flipping over police cars and setting them on fire because your sports team won or lost, or your favorite coach got fired, or something about pumpkins, then you're celebrating. But when you're doing it to buck a system that has systematically oppressed you for countless years since time immemorial, that's rioting, and that's somehow bad. Yeah, that's being drilled home to us by the media. That shows how the difference in the media treats it. And this isn't something new. I mean, you look at after Hurricane Katrina, you would see identical pictures of two people chest deep in water dragging a bag of supplies behind them. But when the person was white, this was an example of somebody scavenging, and a nearly identical picture of somebody who was black. Oh, they were looting. And that's not a lie. You can look that one up on Snopes. Now, the other thing the media is not showing you, and this is when I say I don't mind that they're reporting on this. I do mind that they didn't seem to show up in mass until stuff was set on fire. I mean, they really didn't give a whole lot of coverage to all the peaceful protests. They didn't show the fact that the peaceful protesters were being heckled and in some cases assaulted. I've seen video of it. But the media is not showing you that. The media is not showing you examples of white people looting. Oh, wait, white people don't loot? Bullshit. I've seen video of it from Baltimore. Local news is showing it. National news is not. Okay? They're not showing you the blacks cleaning up the following morning. They're not showing you the black people bringing bottled water to the National Guard and to the police that are standing in the lines the next day. I've seen pictures of that. I've seen video of that, but I've had to go looking for it. You're not going to see that on CNN because they don't want you thinking about this. They want to dehumanize the victim. They don't want you to be sympathetic with that community. They want you saying, well, they're not doing themselves any favors, setting fires to all this stuff and looting and all that, except that, you know what, why are we more concerned about a CVS than we are about lives? And by the way, it would be one thing, I heard this characterized as, oh, they went all crazy just because some guy got killed. Except there's a problem with that. The some guy wasn't just the one guy. You're forgetting that there was also Trayvon Scott, Tyrone West, George King, Anthony Anderson. All of these names are coming just from Baltimore. Now you go outside of that, you've got Mace Hutchison, Terrence Kellum, Walter Scott, Tony Robinson, Eric Harris, Michael Brown, John Crawford, Tamir Rice, Rakia Boyd, Alexia Christian, the list, Eric Garner, Trayvon Martin. Okay, this didn't start in Ferguson, and it didn't start with Martin, because you can go all the way back to Rodney King, and you can go back before that. The fact of the matter is they want to talk about a disturbing pattern of behavior. This is a disturbing pattern of behavior. And the only difference now, the only thing that has changed is that we're getting it on video camera now. And of course, how do the state legislatures want to deal with this problem? Do they want to address the police? No, they want to make it illegal to film the police. Do they want to put body cameras on the police? No, they want to take away our right to watch the police and to keep them honest. Okay? I mean, I could keep going with that list. I could fill a blog. Hell, I could fill a season of these just highlighting individual cases of police shooting unarmed black people. Unarmed. I'm not talking about people who had weapons. Okay, and if they had weapons and those weapons were taken away and then the person was killed, guess what? They were unarmed when they were killed. Okay? And these stories have never added up. We just for years we've laughed it off. We've said, oh yeah, the black people and the police. It's been a cliche. It's been a joke. And we've always given the police the benefit of the doubt, except now, I mean, you cannot watch the video of Walter Scott. You cannot watch the video of Tamir Rice. You cannot watch the video of John Crawford. Okay? You cannot watch the reactions to Michael Brown. Michael Brown was not on video directly, but when you listen to the reactions of people, these stories don't add up, and you cannot deny what has happened and what is going on. And we're worried about rioting? I got to tell you something, folks. I will be more concerned when I live in a society where the police can shoot people indiscriminately and we don't riot. Okay? You know what privilege is? Privilege is the fact that I can walk out of my street and the chances of me being beaten and shot by the police are about the same as me being eaten by a bear. Okay? Zero. It's not going to happen. And I have no fear of it. And if I see the police, hey, look, police, I don't have to think about this. Okay? But don't tell me they don't have to think about it. Don't tell me, don't ask the question, well, if he wasn't doing anything wrong, why did he run? I don't know. Maybe he's been watching the news. I mean, good Lord, whatever he was afraid of, whatever he thought was going to happen to him couldn't have possibly been anywhere near as horrific as what actually happened to him. And this goes beyond this. I mean, we talk about a system of oppression, but let's realize it's not just when people are shot and killed for no reason. And again, I'll go back to it. I will say, you point a gun at a cop and he shoots you, I'm not going to question that. Okay, I wasn't there. I wasn't in his shoes. I don't want to get involved in that. But when you shoot an unarmed man, hell, recently, and I did not get this gentleman's name. Gentleman, I use that term lightly. But they shot a guy who was naked. Shot and killed, fatally shot a naked guy. Well, where's the naked guy keeping his weapon? You know what? I don't even want to know. And I don't want to know what they had to do to go find it. Obviously, he had no weapon. Come on, guys. He shot a naked guy, for Pete's sake. This is about how stop and frisk targets minorities, even though it's shown that whites are more likely to have drugs or weapons on them. It's how the majority of drug users are white, but the majority of people convicted of drug-related offenses are black. It's about how blacks are more likely to be arrested or ticketed for the same action as whites, how they're more likely to be convicted when charged with the same offense, and on average receive tougher sentences for the same conviction. How when a juvenile defendant is white, he's a good kid who made a mistake, but when he's black, it's a disturbing pattern of behavior. That's ironic. Disturbing pattern of behavior. I see a disturbing pattern of behavior in the police here. Okay, it's been going on for a long time, and now that we're actually getting it on tape and we're actually having the legitimacy of it shoved in our face, I think we have to rethink the last half century of these stories and think about how many times we were willing to blow it off. And really, I'm supposed to give everybody the benefit of the doubt there? It's about 3 strikes and you're out. These 3 strikes laws, they're not meant to keep people safe or be tough on crime. They're meant to keep prisons full, because incarceration is now a for-profit industry in this country. And contrast all of that. Contrast the treatment that the blacks receive for literally doing nothing. John Crawford was shot for shopping. Tamir Rice was shot playing. Okay? These other guys have been shot walking or running away. Not a reason to shoot somebody, not a reason to use lethal force. There's only one reason to use lethal force, and that is in response to a lethal threat to either the officer or a bystander. Okay? But when you contrast the treatment that these suspects, or even just citizens, I should say, have received at the hands of the cops, contrast that with the other phenomenon we're catching on video a lot lately, all of these right-wing open carry nut jobs, these Second Amendment loonies, walking around fully armed. In some cases, there was one in Michigan, not too far from where I live, where a guy was carrying an AR-15 on his back and he was standing on the end of a schoolyard, okay, brandishing automatic weapons. And these guys will yell at the cops and taunt the cops and tell them that badge and that gun don't give you control over me, and they'll be screaming at them. I mean, going absolutely nuts. And what happens to these guys? Nothing. Now, technically, you might say, well, they're not breaking the law. Right, but you're telling me that if that person was black and be doing the exact same thing, that person would have a lifespan of more than 10 seconds? Now, I'm not saying either one of those is right. I'm just saying when you see how white people are handled when they're acting like belligerent assholes, and when a black person is shot and killed because he picked a BB gun up off of the shelf in the Walmart where they sell BB guns, I'm sorry, if after all that, if you really look at this in the big picture and you're worried about rioting, you are being manipulated. You are thinking and you are focusing exactly where the media wants you to focus. Now, I'm not gonna condone the media, the looting and the rioting, but I'm gonna understand where it comes from. Because if you're gonna judge somebody, you owe it to them to make an effort to try to understand what they're doing. And if you truly understand them, you're gonna be a lot less likely to judge them. And that's where I am right now. And lost in all of this is finally, it's about whites telling blacks to get an education, get a job, and then turning around and elect politicians who cut public assistance while at the same time shipping jobs overseas, fighting minimum wage increases, fighting labor unions, and gutting public education. Shit, every public service aside from the police, and oftentimes even them. And this story goes back 100+ years. Okay? Again, the only thing that has changed is that we're getting it on tape now. And seeing all these things are true, I'm sorry, but I can't keep sympathizing with the cops. Okay, you know they want us to focus on this so that we'll continue to buy the idea that law enforcement is this really dangerous profession. And I'm not suggesting that it isn't dangerous, but here's a little secret, folks. It actually is not even one of the top 10 most dangerous professions. I'm going to read you a list from Forbes magazine. That's not exactly a liberal rag. Okay, Forbes magazine, and this is going to show you what the top 10 jobs, most dangerous jobs really are. And these aren't counting jobs like elephant trainer. These are actual jobs that people have. Okay, trucker, miner, electrical worker, fisherman, roofing and construction, pilot, trash collector, farmer, logger. All of those professions have a higher rate of injury and death than law enforcement. Law enforcement does not even crack the top 10. Okay? Now, is it up there? I'm sure it is up there. But the fact of the matter is this idea that we have to give these guys absolute power because the job is literally that dangerous. You know what, guys? I have a word for you. This is a concept you have to think about if you're going to give so much benefit of the doubt to the cops here. And that is the idea of the self-fulfilling prophecy. Saying that the police have to be this militant because the communities are reacting so badly. That's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay. Anyway, I mean, this is, again, the only people the only people who have the power to stop this. Because there is no way that the blacks and the black community can behave their way into peace with the police. I mean, Tamir Rice proves that. John Crawford proves that. Okay? I say this guy proves it. God, I mean, he was in custody. By the way, custody, think about what the word custody means. It means that person is your responsibility. When somebody dies in your custody, this is a very bad thing. This is not something that is supposed to happen. This is, I mean, custody, even if you think of a child custody case, for example, it means responsibility. Something is being placed in your responsibility. This is why we feed prisoners. This is why we give them medicine. This is why we take care of them. This is why, if one of them is going to kill themselves, we put them on suicide watch. Because when somebody dies in custody, that's a human rights violation. That's a friggin' war crime, people. Nobody should die in custody. That is inexcusable. And that list I rattled off, by the way, was only a partial list. Those were just the names I could find quickly. There are many, many others, and I didn't mean to leave anybody off. But bottom line, this can only end when the police want it to end. Okay? This is going to continue as long as these tactics continue. And honestly, it's not going to stop the day that the tactics stop. The day that the tactics stop is the day it starts getting better. But until the police want to make it basically their priority to have not just crime off the street, but peace and order and safety in the communities. And that means their own behavior is being held to that standard. This is never going to end. Okay? And you can bet that these riots and the looting and everything else is going to be a predictable outcome. So let's think about this. If we're going to judge it, if we're going to say the looting is a problem, I'm not saying it's justified, but let's understand where it comes from. Okay, now I got to calm down a minute because that was a very long, angry rant. And unfortunately, my next section is a much lighter piece. So I don't know. Let me transition by telling a joke. How many cops does it take to throw a guy down the stairs? None. He fell. Oh, what's that, officer? Ah, shit. Now I'm under arrest. Anyway, you know what? I'm going to take a minute. I'm going to go get a drink. I'm going to come back. Okay. I'm better now. Let's continue. My guest tonight is Chris Hazelton, creator of the Misfile and Six Gun Mage webcomics. Chris, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about Misfile, if you would.
Well, the premise behind Misfile is that the entire universe is held together and defined by a set of filing cabinets in heaven. If you make changes to the files, you fundamentally alter the nature of the universe from the beginning of time to the end. It's a system that works well for thousands and thousands of years until, as it is wont to do, bureaucracy and nepotism set in. And the guy running the department gets the job because his dad's really important and somebody owes his brother a favor. But really all he wants to do is sit around all day and do as little work as possible, which he accomplishes by drinking and smoking pot on the job until one day his bosses show up for a spot inspection and he's in the middle of smoke and he shoves the joint in his pocket, throws a couple files back wherever he can find them, shoves a couple of pages under the carpet and says, "This is not an issue. As soon as they go, I'll fix everything." Midway through the inspection, the joint burns its way through his pocket directly to his groin. His bosses figure out he's smoking on the job, and they put him on indefinite leave without pay, which is basically temporary exile to Earth. But they don't find out what he did with all the files just before they got there. And he knows if they figure that out, he'll be kicked out forever. So he has to find the people whose lives he just inadvertently screwed up and move it with them and keep them quiet long enough to finagle his way back into heaven somehow and fix everything.
and the two characters, that would be Ash and Emily, of course.
Ash, who used to be a boy and wakes up as a girl, and Emily, who is an overachiever who has just gotten her Harvard acceptance letter, only to discover that the last 2 years of her life, including all her college entrances and applications, have just been erased.
And this story, this has been going on for over 10 years now. You've had this running, right?
It was 11 years in March.
Oh, wow. And now you've been updating basically 5 days a week for, well, as long as I can remember it. I haven't read it from the beginning, but most of the time.
I started actually at 3 days a week.
Yeah.
And then when I made it my full-time job, I made a pact to do it 5 days a week as long as I could continue to do that. And I've been sticking to that. So.
I was kind of wondering about how you kept up that pace, because I did a very simple webcomic for about 2 years, and it was all I could do to get a 3-panel thing updated once a week. So I was just wondering how fast you got to go through that. Now it's just you producing this?
Just me.
That's
wow. The art side is just me. I've got some people that handle me. My wife handles the business end. I've got a guy who does the advertising stuff, and I've got someone else who did my web design. But the comic and all the updating, yeah, that's all me.
Yeah, all the writing and art's you. That's incredible. Now I'm getting
credit where credit's due. I don't handle any of that technical.
that is a big part of it. And now I'm guessing, and I, based on what you just said, but also from the quality of some of the earlier issues and the relative consistency, considering how long it's been going on, that Misfile is not your first comic.
It is my second comic, actually. My first comic, I did. Well, actually, originally when I wrote my first comic, I wrote it as a series of teleplays to sell as an animated series, but I very quickly realized that was never going to happen. And so when I decided that I was going to bite the bullet and just do a comic finally, I took those and made them into the webcomic Building 12, which ran from 2002 to 2006 before I ended it.
Yeah.
And that was my first comic. And I would love to be able to say that that's where I made all of mistakes, but realistically, that's where I made all of my first mistakes.
Right.
I still make mistakes. So I did get a lot of them out of the way there, though.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot by the time that I did Misfile.
So how long, I mean, even before you're doing it professionally, how long have you been making comics? Is something like a lifelong? Or?
I started.
Oh, really?
Actually, no, I guess technically I started about 6 months before I did Building 12. I did two very short issues. They were 12 pages each of a comic called Mad Beans for David Kalavinaj in Los Angeles. And that convinced me that it was something that I could do. And since then, I've stuck almost exclusively to just doing my own work. Although I did do a Dark Horse submission for Peter Prewitt's Shards Universe novel. That I was turning into a comic, but that hasn't really gone anywhere yet. So, but that's the only thing that I've agreed to do that were not my own characters since that point.
Now, I'm sensing a bit of an anime manga influence. On this. I see the picture there. We're on video. The show will be audio, but I can see the picture right behind you there. That's
growing up, I always wanted to tell stories, and I decided that film was probably the best way to do that. So when I went to college, I went to film school, and then when I was in college, I very quickly fell in love with Japanese animation. But at that point, I was 2 years into my degree. My school did not offer an animation program, so I stuck with the film. But in the back of my head, I always really loved the art style from manga and anime. So. Yeah.
You have any favorites? I'm sorry.
I went to Los Angeles and I started working in film, and I did a lot of anime type side businesses. My wife and I and my roommate at the time ran a business for several years where we would buy animation cells from Japan and then resell them in this country, and that paid a lot of our bills for a couple of years before they went to digital coloring, and that whole market dried up. So
right.
And after that, it was sort of, well, what do I do with my spare time? And I was working in film, but I wasn't feeling particularly creative because I was working mostly in contracts. And so my roommate suggested to me that I do a comic or an online comic, and I sat down. I finally took his advice and did it, and things just kind of took off from there.
Yeah.
Became my hobby, and then it became my career. So.
Do you so any particular anime or manga that rank pretty highly on your list there? Any favorites?
Oh, there are a lot. I mean, I got to go by genres.
I'm the same way.
Yeah. I mean, there's some stuff that everybody's heard before. Like, I mean, I think Ghost in the Shell not only ranks among the greatest anime movies ever made, but I think it ranks among some of the top science fiction films ever made. But then I've also got a lot of weird quirky stuff. Like I absolutely fell in love with Jubei-chan, the Ninja Girl Secret of the Lovely Eye Patch years back, and I still
I'll have to look that one up. I don't know that one.
Yeah, not a tops of everybody's list, but it just sort of hit all the right buttons with me. Right. So Ranma 1/2 was a big influence in the 90s.
Oh, really? A magical transformation?
Tenchi and El Hazard, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, not too surprised to hear Ranma 1/2, considering that you do essentially a transgender / magical transformation style trope there with Ash. So,
It was one of those things where I'd seen it done a whole lot of times, but I had never seen it done the way I thought I would write it. And so that sort of became my take on it.
Well, and from a sort of a social message point of view, you actually seem to have managed to create the only legitimate trans character that comes from the sort of magical transformation category, because all of Ash was left intact. I mean, like everything that he was before the Misfile was left intact, but he wakes up totally like wrong body, just everything different and nothing right. And he can't go back, and it wasn't a choice, and it's not a superpower or anything like that.
And it was honestly not an attempt, to work any social message into it at the time. I was I've always been fascinated by the psychology of gender. But since I did it, and I started talking to so many people who are transgendered and who are like, well, you know what, I like what you're doing with this, and that you take it as a serious problem and don't display it for laughs. Right. I really tried to become much more involved with that community. So, and they've always also been for the most part. Every now and then, I get some people who are not, but for the most part,
well, you're on the internet,
so.
And you mentioned that you didn't necessarily start out, but you also, I mean, it seems like both Misfile and what I've read of Six Gun, which is not, unfortunately, I'm only about 1 or 2 chapters into it. I just started reading it the other night. But I mean, you most of your female characters are also very strong. You don't stick to the damsel in distress too often. I mean, these are definitely independent, strong women that you write.
I feel like it's been kind of like the big macho guy hero and the damsel in distress. It's not that I have a problem with it. I just feel like it's been done to death. And so to me, when I try and think of an interesting character or a new take on a character, so many times the character that I want to write, if I wrote him as a man, it's been done to death. But if I write that same character as a strong woman, it's to me, it's more interesting psychologically, and it allows me to go down avenues that I haven't seen those same types of characters go down when they're written as men. So, but also, like I've always said, I find women both easier and more fun to draw. I've always loved writing Ash because I get to write a guy, but I get to draw a girl, and it just makes the easiest character to write and draw at the same time. But even so. Even when I'm writing an actual girl like Emily or Kylie, in my attempt to keep them honest in some way, I don't necessarily write them first as women. I try and find an aspect of myself in the character that I can relate to, and that's how I approach the character. And then all the other concerns about them sort of frame that reference point.
Okay. Well, and speaking of which, that because like you say, the aspect of gender and even like there's some questions of sexuality too with Emily too, especially early on, which don't quite. But they don't really dominate the story. There's a lot of other subplots going on. There's love triangles. There's rivalries, and in particular, there's Ash's passion of racing. I was curious why how you picked that, or why you decided to make racing cars kind of. Such a strong influence for him.
Very specifically from the one car that Ash drives. It was the car that I learned to drive manual transmission on, and I never owned it, but it was in my family, and it technically belonged to my grandmother, who had all but stopped driving by that point. So although it was never technically my car, it was effectively my car, and I absolutely fell in love with it. It was the one car I've ever owned that if I asked it to do something, I knew it was just going to do it. There wasn't going to be a question about it.
I haven't had one of those yet.
I was living in Los Angeles just before I came up with the idea for Misfile, and my grandmother ended up selling the car, and I wanted it, but she lived on the East Coast, and I lived on the West Coast, and realistically, that was just never going to happen.
Yeah.
So I was really depressed about that, and so when I started coming up with this story and just trying to, I never want to have just one thing going on, so I was trying to hang it on a framework of different elements that I could spring around in the story. That was a huge influence, and I had also just watched the second season of Initial D and said, "Hey, well, let's mesh some things I really like recently. Let's pull in the Rama stuff and the psychology of gender and my car and all this racing stuff, and it all just sort of blended together." Well, also, I was working a really difficult filing job at the time, and I think you can see that kind of actually influence as well. So,
weren't happen to be smoking anything on the job there?
No, I'm actually, the funny thing is I'm actually super straight-laced, not from any moral high ground. I've just never been able to develop a taste for alcohol. I mean, God, I wish I could sometimes, but I'm like the least smoking and drinking guy you're ever gonna meet. But,
and yet you create a character like I'm sorry, is it Rumisel? How do you say that? Rumsiel. Okay. So I got to apologize to you because unfortunately, by the time this show airs, that Kickstarter you've got going will have ended. I'm going to try to spread the word around for you a little bit, then I'm going to put in myself because I want at least the digital download, if not the DVD. I got to tell you, I'm looking forward to that. Can you describe a little bit about what you're doing with that?
Well, like I said earlier, my background is in film. My degree is in film, and I spent better part of a decade working in Hollywood. And it's been about 10 years since I've really done anything in the fiction film genre. I've done a bunch of videos in connection with Six Gun Mage, just sort of little documentaries. But in terms of telling stories in fiction film, I haven't done anything in about 10 years. And I was really missing it and kept wondering, well, what is a project I can do that is realistic? And I kept looking at the first couple chapters of Misfile, and I really wasn't seeing anything in it that I couldn't do with the assets that I had available to me. And so I tossed the idea around for a couple of years and said, you know what, one of these, screw it, I'm going to stop wondering, when putting this off and what ifing, and I've got an audience now, and I've got these assets at my disposal here now, and it just seemed like the right time. So I'm taking the first 40 pages or so. I call it Misfile Day 1 because really it's just going to encompass the first day of the story.
Okay, so there's no racing scenes.
Right, that's why I can do it.
Well, wait, how many of these you got to do before we're going to see a racing scene?
Racing scenes. But I'm going to take all that and I'm going to turn it into, I think a pilot episode would be a more appropriate way to describe it than an actual feature. It's not going to be feature length.
Right.
It's going to be more sort of TV length. But I'm hoping to have something real fun, another way for people to get into the story, just another avenue of approach for it. Just actually finished my first night of auditions last night. So,
I saw that on your news feed there.
I'm pretty psyched.
That's cool. Now you've got another comic I mentioned, Six Gun Mage, which unfortunately I've only, like I said, I've only just started myself. But tell us a little bit about that. What's that all about?
Well, sort of the same way with I did with Misfile. I said, well, what am I really into? And growing up, even though I grew up in sort of rural Massachusetts, I grew up shooting, and my dad had firearms, and it really was a great bonding experience for the two of us in my teens. We'd go to the range, every weekend. And I just had really a lot of fun. And it's something I sort of had to give up, first when I was in college and then when I was living in Los Angeles. And then when I moved back to the East Coast, and eventually my father died and I inherited all of those guns, I found a local range, and it was just something that I really sort of fell in love with again and said, I want to. Well, for years, I've been considering making a sword comic because I've taken 4 or 5 different forms of sword fighting, and I used to collect swords as well in Los Angeles because I couldn't have guns there. And after just all the shooting I was doing here, I said, why don't I do a comic about this, and hopefully I can make my passion for this show through the same way I have with my other passions in Misfile. So,
right. Now, you mentioned your dad just now, and if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm confused here, a while back, I want to say in Misfile, and I want to say it was on the Transgender Day of Remembrance, if I correctly, you'd mentioned that he passed away some years back.
Mm-hmm.
And
in 2007.
Okay, 2007. And now, he was trans? Is that right?
Yes, he was. It was something that he dealt with his whole life, but only really came out with anybody his family included, when I was around the time when I was in college.
Oh, okay.
And it was actually a reason I almost didn't do Misfile. It was sort of a can of worms I didn't want to open. I didn't want to make things awkward for my family and what they were going through. So I actually wrote the first chapter, and I didn't put it up. I sent it to everybody in my family first and said, "Look, this is what I'm doing. But anybody's uncomfortable with it, I'll let it die here." But all the feedback I got from my family was really positive. So,
and you said he was a fan of it as well.
Yep. And so I put
That's
it
great.
up. He actually was always a very large supporting influence of all of the creative endeavors in my life. I was briefly a professional musician as well, and he managed my band, and he helped. When I was in high school, he helped me build a recording studio in our basement. So,
wow, that's great.
And in addition, I got a lot of support from my mother as well on the art side, just because she was a professional illustrator, and I think that helped my work ethic as well. Because until I went to school with other children, I assumed that what adults did is every morning they got up and made me breakfast and then drew for 12 hours. So that's what my life has sort of become too, and that was my framework there. So
that's great. So, what do you do when you're not drawing comics?
Well, I have kids now, so not as much as I used to.
That's right. How are they doing?
Yeah, I guess in some ways.
How old are they now? Because I remember you mentioned when your son was born.
Avery is my first son is 6. Evan, my second son, is 4, and I have another on the way in August.
Oh, congratulations! And 6 and 4.
That's greatly affected the schedule of the upcoming film. Actually,
I can imagine. I can imagine. 6 and 4 though. Those are good ages. Those are good ages.
Principal photography, and I have to be done with it in June because the last 2 have come early.
Oh, right. So now you have so this is your full-time job. So let's talk a little capitalism here. I see you got a store on your site.
Yep.
You sell the graphic novels of the webcomic. Yep. And you got that great. Do you have any of those vinyl figurines of Ash in the devil costume there left? Because
I've got about 150 of them. In my garage.
Okay. Well, anybody out there is listening. If you want to get me a birthday present, I really want one of those figures. So, and then now, do you do any commission work?
Yeah,
do you do that as well? Okay.
It's funny. It's a when it rains it pours situation. I'll go a month or 2 with just nothing, and then suddenly I'll get 8 of them in a week. But yeah, I do them. I turn around. I try and keep it real fast. And I charge by character. So if you're looking for just one thing, one person, it's pretty cheap. If you want me to draw a whole comic strip for you, which some people do,
right.
Full price, but.
So, okay, so you've got the 2 comics going. You've got the movie coming up. Are there any projects that we should check out, or anything you want to tease or plug?
Well, no, like I said, I've got my YouTube channel, the 6 Gun Mage YouTube channel, and that's just me having a lot of fun exploring both real world and comic issues. They're mostly firearms related. I go over a lot of everything in 6 Gun Mage, even though it's a fantasy universe. Mm-hmm. All the guns have real world analogs, so I own a lot of them. I go over all the details and specifics and histories of them. I'm working on a series called Like a Gun Mage, where all the gun mages in 6 Gun Mage have these special powers and abilities they can do with their guns. Like I try and use real life science to recreate some of the magical abilities that they do, and I've made films about that.
What's the name of the channel again? Did you say?
6 Gun Mage.
Oh, 6 Gun Mage. Okay.
Cool. Or you can just search for Chris Hazelton. I think it'll come up either way.
Okay.
I've also been exploring some real world myths. I had a guy tell me that he had a friend who had made a suit of chainmail that would stop bullets, and so I had my friend Jeff make me a suit of chainmail, and we shot it up. And
I was going to say, I hope you weren't volunteering for that, because
no,
I wouldn't imagine it would work.
A little swath, and I put it on a character I affectionately named Commodore Cantaloupe, and we blew the hell out of him with a 22.
I was going to say I wouldn't think chainmail would stop too many bullets.
No,
how did it work?
I was pretty sure that it wouldn't. So I did not bet anyone's life on that one.
All right. Well, guys, I'm gonna definitely go and check it out. Most of what we've talked about can be linked to from misfile.com. There's Patreon there. You can get to the store there. I believe there's a link to the older comic from the store, the Building 12.
Yeah, there should, in the link section, there should be links to Building 12, which is still out there, just not being updated. And right underneath the comic and in the link section, there are links to Six Gun Mage as well. So
great. Well, Chris, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
And as always, if you have any questions or comments of anything you've heard tonight, feel free to drop me a line at niceguy9418 at usa.com. Good night, and thanks for tuning in.